Welcome back to Return to Heart. In today's episode, we explore alignment, how acceptance, attunement, and connection with others draw us out of hiding and back into the life God designed for us. Let's get started.
Right before we turned these mics on, started recording, we were just talking about what a drag I am on the podcast.
Yes.
And what I've experienced is, from both you guys, is I've been able to sort of see that, admit that, sort of acknowledge that it's probably true. See, I'm getting there. I haven't said it's true, but I'm saying it's probably true. I think what I've appreciated is the acceptance that I've received from both you guys, that you still let me do this sometimes. And this one's one of those days. I'm really a lot of gratitude that we've gone from, for me, admission to some acceptance, some admission, to a little more acceptance. I'm getting there. But man, I really want to get in this thing called alignment. Okay, and I will. You need to know, because I'm growing and learning, changing. I'll be mostly quieter and much less of a distraction. And hopefully the podcast this time will resonate with more people and help more people.
Wow.
And that was just called toxic shame.
But
that's in another podcast.
What is happening
That's in another podcast called Toxic Shame. We deal with that when we talk about the
business. But that was an amazing example of shamelessness, too.
Yeah. It was.
Good job. From both ends. Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, you take that and you salvage all that, Phil.
You know what you need? What? You need alignment. Mm-hmm. You're in bad need of alignment.
Okay.
Shall I unpack that a little?
That's perfect.
Okay. Alignment, getting back in line with who you're made to be.
Oh, I need a lot of that.
So
I'm not making light of the subject, but I'm making light of me.
Is that what you call that, Todd?
Yeah. Shamelessness.
Is that what that was? Okay.
Oh, God. Okay. I'm serious. Go ahead. You got the Bible open. That means I need to stop laughing.
Yeah, stop laughing. So we have, at least up until today, we've been following a little bit of a track, and this thing we call the transformational process, right? These 5 things is real briefly. We start with the image of God. He breathed it into us, and abandonment occurs in a broken world. And in response to that, we will make up humans make up toxic shame stories about themselves, inadequacy, to explain the abandonment, which becomes a false narrative that we live by. So to battle the false narrative, we attempt to manage people, manage relationships, instead of really live in them. It's called codependency. And codependency is really heavy to have to carry. Like, no one can be all codependent all the time, yet we really need that for relief, and then we kick it on up for ultimate relief to this addictive cycle that's easy to fall into, even addiction to the world of anxiety and depression. And so now we have been, the last several episodes, we've been walking down how you get from self to sickness, from the Imago Dei to being sick in addiction. And we started with admission, being under a mission together and making a mission of need. And then from there, how the acceptance, the 2 tracks of acceptance, grieving powerlessness, and then being accepted by a community of people, by other people. And then attunement, this beautiful getting on the same page emotionally, someone seeing me, and as Dan Siegel has said, soothing me, and I'm safe and secure with them. And then we talked about how important attachment is, secure attachment, to be really and truly in sync with someone, and you're with me and I'm with you, and we're doing this together. And so we arrive then back to where we started. Now we weren't born perfect. We're not going to end perfect. We're not going to be perfect in between. But this idea of alignment is, we were joking earlier, like, hey, Jeff, you need to get back in line with who God made you to be. And so we've been using, in most of the episodes, we've been using this template with the story of the prodigal son found in Luke 15, which is really a story of a prodigal father. Prodigal just means extravagant. So the son practiced extravagant waste, and this father practices and shows extravagant grace and acceptance. And so the first part of that, we talked about, he made his admission when he came to himself, came to his senses, and he admitted, like, man, the world has stopped giving me what I need. And we talked about like, hey, it doesn't have to be some ethereal revelation, though sometimes it is. The boy was needy and knew it, made this admission, and then these beautiful words, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And like, man, this father accepting, running toward him, literally open arms, being accepted. And the three of us talked about how we have experienced acceptance, certainly with each other, by our wives, by people that love us, by 12-step communities, and how powerful that is. And then the father, the son said, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son, but the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe, put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. He said, no. I see your pain. I know where you've been, and you are my son. I'm attuning to you. I get it. You've been in a bad place, and I'm going to attend to you, this attunement. And then verse 24, he called for the celebration. For this, my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. It's like, this is my boy. This is my son. And we won't read this part of it, but the brother even said, this son of yours, the older brother. If you're not familiar with the story, read in Luke chapter 15. Those of you who are know that character in the story. This son of yours, a derisive term. And the father's like, no, I'm attuned and attached to him. And so then in verse 31, the father says to the son, the older brother, he said to him, son, notice the attachment with him. Notice the attunement with him. Notice the acceptance of this other son. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. And we just stayed there for a second. This guy's being a jerk. This older son, he's just being a real jerk. And the father is still relentlessly pursuing him, attaching to him, attuning to him, accepting him. Verse 32, it was fitting to celebrate and be glad. Remember from previous talks and podcasts, gladness is an outcome of doing the other feelings well. So this father is feeling these feelings with these now two sons. Be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Your brother is back in alignment with how he's made and with whom he's made to be. He's back home. And alignment is our recognition that we're back home. Like, oh, this is where I belong. And if I may, just one more minute of a story. A man in our treatment center, part of my job, you guys know this, part of my job was to have an exit interview sort as guys would leave treatment. I would hand them a continuing care plan, like work this plan after you leave our care, and this will help you deepen your recovery. And this man was sitting in the office with me. I'll change his name and say it was Jim. Jim was not paying attention to the continuing care plan. He was literally just looking off into a corner. And when I got through going through it, that he was not listening to, he looked at me and his complexion literally changed. He's like me. He's fairly light complected anyway, but he got even whiter. And his countenance looked like a 4-year-old boy about to go into a big giant schoolhouse all by himself. And he said, Phil, I'm 62 years old and I have drank alcohol every single day since I was 12. For 50 years, he said, unless I was really violently ill, and some days when I was violently ill, I have drank alcohol. I have not drank alcohol for the last 84 days. How in the world am I going to go home and live sober? How am I going to do this? And I literally, Richard Foster, I think it was, talks about breath prayer, like, Lord help. That's a good question he's asking. And what came to me was this, and this is what alignment is. I said to him, Jim, you've done a really amazing job at building huts, collecting firewood, eating berries. You find a possum once in a while to kill and skin and to eat. You've done amazing. For 50 years, you built this little village over here on the shore. But you're a fish. You've done all of that with your fins. You're in the water now. You're made for the water. So what you're doing now is not the exception. What you're doing is how you're made. You're not made for the last 50 years. You're made for what's happening now. And I think of him often, and I pray for him often when I think of him. He has a degenerative disease. He suffered from a degenerative disease. that will eventually, if something else doesn't, will be terminal. But that story to me so pictures what alignment is. We can get so caught up in what we're doing to make ourselves okay, which we call addiction, anxiety, depression, that we will literally forget, I wasn't made for this. I'm made for being in relationship of intimacy with people that love me, with my own identity, and with the God who created me. That's alignment.
You're a fish.
And you built a great little town, but you're made for that. You're made for the water. And think of these stories, these narratives of Jesus, and he's the woman with the issue of blood that we mentioned in a previous episode, and the woman at the well, the Roman centurion, all these different people Jesus is talking to. He's saying that to them through all these 5 A's, we call them, upon their admission of need. Please heal my daughter. Please heal me of my leprosy. If you will, you can. And all these different people. Jesus, Todd, this is just amazing teaching on Matthew 20 about the 2 blind men. But these people have one thing in common. They come with their admission of need. And Jesus says, you have come to the right person and place. I accept you. I love you. Let me attune to your need and your humanness. That's what I came for. Let me show you just how I see and soothe, how safe and secure you are with me in attachment, so you can get realigned with how you're made. So when he touches these people, he's bringing them into alignment in relationship with him. And he's saying things like, daughter, go in peace. John chapter 8, with the woman caught in adultery, who is it that condemns you? No one. But I don't condemn you either. You go and sin no more. And all these narratives of Jesus, what he's doing is what we call the 5 A's that end with, now you are mine. You're mine, and we're in this together. You're aligned with me. I came for you. It's alignment.
It's good. It's a way just to pivot, just some Phil and Jeff, let's talk about, there is a component to alignment that we would say is correction or discipline, right? Confrontation is what we would call it. And so, I think so often we can get out of line, and we need that. If you think of your car, when the car wheels get out of line, you need to take it in someone to get realigned, and that's the correction piece of it. And I think so often we want to avoid correction. We either because we come from families, children, our correction was more by nature abusive than it was helpful. It wasn't really correction. It was more punishment than discipline. And so I just think of, so often we hear that word alignment and we push back to that. But we all need that in our lives. We need to, again, and we've been talking about it every podcast, we got to have people in our lives that are going to bring us to a place of alignment. And part of that is correction. And so let's pivot some, because that's the first half of it, what you're talking about. But there is
it's not too big a pivot, because I think beautiful alignment or correction, if it doesn't come in a context of where we've been prior to this piece of it, if there hasn't been acceptance, attunement, attachment, there's no safety for someone to actually align and turn that tire or show you something about yourself that you've missed or that you're not believing or that you're not seeing in a way that actually comes, again, in the secure context of, this is somebody that's already shown me that they love me for who I am. This correction or that piece of alignment is not picking on me. It's not telling me I'm bad. It's not provoking my toxic shame. I'm a failure. It's actually coming from a loving place of someone that's already said to me or shown me, not said to me, shown me that they love me. They've accepted me in my admission and there's attunement around that, or there's attachment, there's attunement. Actually, there's acceptance, attunement, attachment, and then there come alignment. Now it can work.
Yeah.
I say now it can work. I think sometimes we try to bring all that. It's like, it'd be like I wouldn't bring if I'm out of alignment and I can tell by looking at the tires, I'm not bringing it to your house. I'm going to somebody that knows my car, okay, and I know it wants my good, and they're going to actually put it in alignment, or even tell me these tires are worn, you need to get new tires, to use the metaphor.
Yeah, that's good.
But too many times I think we try to help somebody without already having the context to bring that kind of help.
Yeah. One writer said it this way. I remember reading this when I was a youth pastor, and it has stuck with me ever since. He said, so often, we're talking really about sanctification, discipleship. That is this process. And he says this, so often we start with admission and we want to go directly to alignment. And he says, then that's the issue with the church. And he says, we've got to be able to build relational bridges that can bear the weight of truth. And that's the correction piece. And yet the church doesn't want to take that middle 3 sections that you just spoke on. That's time, that's energy, that's effort, it's messy. And so we want admission right to, let it get right back to Christ, and we don't do the relational piece of the puzzle to what we would say is the 5 A's.
So even how we started today's podcast, I started it kind of tongue-in-cheek, being silly, okay? But the truth, even behind all that, initially when we were going to start this podcast, I told you guys and I told the guys on our team, what, I really don't need to be part of that podcast. There's you two guys can do a great job. I'm not needed here. In fact, I really was avoiding it. Not because I necessarily didn't think I would just say this, I was avoiding it for a lot of reasons in my own story that told me that if I step into something like this, okay, and I show myself on here and I start talking about my life, okay, somebody's going to cut my legs out from underneath me. And I hadn't articulated that. I started to walk into that, but I was really kind of avoiding sort of the microphone. Okay, just it's in my story. I won't go into it today. But one of the guys on our team, Jeff Tixon, actually confronted me. Now, this is a 40-plus year friend. He's the operations behind all the stuff we're doing at Tin Man, but he's a 40-plus year friend. He's the one that confronted me, and he said, "Jeff, you need to do that, and you have a lot to offer." And then he said this. He said, "You're really good at it." Now, I feel some shame saying that out loud because some people, I'm going, "Oh, God, yeah, he thinks he's good at this." Well, that's healthy shame. I don't think I'm the best. I'm not Joe Rogan. But in our context, I think I do add to our team. But it took the confrontation or the alignment, the aligning of a friend to tell me, "Jeff, sometimes it'll be Todd and Phil or Phil and Todd, and sometimes you and Phil or you and Todd, but really, again, I was trying to be never me." And there was woundedness in that decision. And part of the alignment for me was having a friend affirm me. But here's the point I'm making all that. Because there was a context for that relationship, I believed him. Boy, which is scary. I believed him. So it wasn't arrogance and I got something to offer, because that's gross. It was, man, I believed him. Maybe I can make this podcast a little better just because I'm different than you guys, and that difference might be good. That was it. But the context meant, because other people tell me something like that, and I'll be, yeah, right. This came from a 42-year-old friend whose opinion I trust, but also who's known me over half my life.
And the beautiful support for what you two are talking about, that part of how the brain protects us, which is its number one job. You heard me say it 1,000 times, the brain only does one thing. All it does is keep us alive. Now, that's a big job, but that's all it does. And the first step of doing that is protection. Well, one of the ways it does that, it creates linkages or joining. And so when a person makes admission and he or she has experiences that I make an admission, they go straight to alignment, they connect admission with punishment. And they're never going to do it again. Right. And so what you two are talking about is those slats in between, those steps in between that builds, that can bear the weight of truth, with Tixon, Jeff Tixon, with you. That's what's happening. You also have a linkage with Jeff Tixon. Jeff Tixon equals truth, comfort, grace, confrontation, imperfection, all that stuff. And so when it comes from that source, what you just said, it comes from that source, you got a linkage there too. And all of a sudden, your protection is the one, and connection is the one telling you this information, and you can walk forward into doing it. And so the damage that happens is when we do go from, I've heard Todd say this a lot, when you do go from alignment, from admission straight to alignment, and you miss those slats, yes, it's important, but how it's important is we're literally wired to experience those intervening 3 slats over and over and over and over and over. And that bridge is built, and the linkage is like, oh, if it comes from him, this is believable. And so that's a huge thing both of you are saying. And just notice how again, in the narratives of the New Testament, in God's action in the Old Testament as a covenant people, you're a covenant people, you're a covenant people. And so that's the beauty behind what both of y'all are highlighting is, yes, alignment has to do with both tracks we've talked about, being a fish back in the water and getting realigned. Both of them have one thing in common. The reason he could believe me is for 84 days, that dude and I had sat toe to toe and walked through this thing, and he with other people too, him with other people too. But I'm so glad you two brought up those 2 examples of that other track.
Well, because there's other linkages. Like the minute I just said all that out loud, even when I said out loud that I had someone that told me that I had something to offer, and then I said this, I said it. I can't believe I said, honestly, I can't believe I said it, but I immediately went into internal panic when I said that he said, I think you're good at this. And I went, oh gosh, did I just say that out loud? Because I also have other linkages to a significant person in my life who was a mentor who repeatedly told me that I wasn't a good communicator and I wasn't a good writer. And he was, and my job was to make him famous, and my job was to stay hidden. And I believed him. And that's why I almost didn't get on this podcast. And it's also why when I just now said I thought I might be good at it. See, I just said I thought I might be good at it. See, I'm minimizing right there. And I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not saying I'm the best podcaster. I've done a few of these. Good night. I've never done this. But I knew I have something to bring. Yeah. While you're talking, my whole inside was going, you're in trouble. It's crazy how strong that was in my body. We're talking about doing podcasts, but I'm just going, I think that relates to so many places in my life where I have all these connections, positive and negative, like damaging, hurtful, harmful, but then healing, redemptive, believing, which really just what it says to me, even sitting here right now, is I need, as part of the ongoing nature of this work we're doing, we call it the transformational process. It is a process. Which means it's repeating. It's how much work it takes for me to continue to submit myself to the process so that I start developing more linkages, more connections that I can tell the truth about myself. By the way, not just what's wrong with me, but tell the truth about how God made me in some ways that I'm ashamed of, even the beautiful parts of how he made me. Okay, but all of it, all of Jeff. I can admit that, and I experience acceptance and attunement and attachment, and now even being in a place where the possibilities I can experience some alignment from trustworthy people. Yeah. Golly, that's an incredible real time what's going on in my chest. And you guys know me well. You go, I can't believe I said that. You guys are probably sitting there going, oh God, we're gonna have to scrap this podcast. But I actually said it.
And that's part of how scary it is. I mean, we do live in a fallen world, and I know some of these episodes we've mentioned it by name, transformational process. Other ones we haven't. When we have, I think the image of the actual diagram has been on the screen. But you do see that these 5 A's, as we kind of informally call them, they really are always in process. And until we are with Jesus, we're never going to arrive anywhere. You've been at this a long time. Recovery a long time, out of treatment for a long time, leading, and sitting here in real time. Part of that alignment had to be, no, Jeff, stay present in what your friend Jeff said to you and dare to believe, A, that he was telling you the truth, and B, that we welcome you to do that sitting here with us.
Okay. That's right. So here's what else I did. It's just now becoming instinctive to use the tools that we've learned. Is rather than sit on that and then tighten up on the inside for the rest of today and probably tonight and the rest of, we're certainly sitting here, I went to admission.
Yep, that's right.
Like it's just become instinctive. Like, no, Jeff, don't sit on that. Don't torture yourself here. My whole stomach needed it. My chest right here. And I said, well, I need to say that out loud. And then even in the interaction, listening to you, sitting here with you guys, just by your countenance and what we experienced here, the attunement, the attunement, the attachment I know is present. You know, even in that moment, like I can just tell you that a lot of the pressure left my chest.
Yes.
Because I didn't hold it in.
That's right.
I didn't hold it in.
I hope that is contagious to people listening, not because it's us three, but what we're getting at, really the entire, because what you describe is a microcosm of a return to heart.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like you're made in a certain way, and it's literally the name of the podcast. And so to return to heart means you get back to that place where you walk into a room as a little boy, not a grown man, and be able to make admission of what's going on in you and to receive those other three, those in rapid, the place of acceptance, a place where you're attuned to, a place where attachment is reinforced, and now you're back in alignment with how you're made.
Yeah.
Dan Allender I remember Dan Allender making this statement, and I love most everything Dan Allender's ever written. He's an old friend. He's helped me in my life. I respect the way he's worked with story and in the whole, especially around trauma, especially around sexual trauma. But he said one time, we're more ashamed of our beauty than we are of our ugliness. That it's harder to stand in and admit the ways that God made us that actually are beautiful. And so I know in my story, I'm certainly ashamed of the things that I don't like about me, but I'm probably more ashamed of probably the things that are my greatest strengths. You know, and I could tell 100 stories around it, but one that just came to my mind sitting here was, I played all kind of athletics, college athletics through high school, and, I wasn't, incredible, but I was good enough to play multiple sports at a college level. And but all the way through that, I remember in my family, I really misunderstood, I think, this whole idea of humility. But what I remember is, I never celebrated a win. Now, I remember some of this is good actually, but I remember I was taught to handle a strikeout the same way as I handled a home run. So you struck out, you just put the bat back, go sit on the bench. You hit a home run, you cross home plate, you pick up the bat, put it back, and sit down. You catch a touchdown pass. You hand the ref the ball, and you walk back. My brothers used to tell me, Jeff, if you get in the end zone, act like you're not surprised to be there. Like, oh my God. No, it's like, yeah, it's just like another day, whatever. Yeah, I expected to be here. Like, so some of that was, hey, I wasn't running around, pulling my shirt off, like, look at me. There was none of that. None. But I look back and I thought, gosh, I wish I would have had some encouragement that it was at least okay. Just even a little quick fist bump, like just some kind of sense of yes. Like I wish I had permission to have a moment of going, that felt awesome.
Yeah,
because it really wasn't a great catch or a really great hit or a great steal or whatever it was I was playing. Like just have a moment. Again, not calling attention to myself. Again, I already called attention to myself by what I did. Right. But like they're so tamped down that I think even that's why that was such a big deal for me even on this podcast just now when that happened was I'd made a comment about myself. I don't care whether it's true or not. I think intuitively I kind of know who I am more at this age. Anyway, all that to say, like that was, I think I'm alone with that. I think that's hard for many of us is to see ourselves that way.
Yes.
And then to have people actually say, I go back, admission, acceptance, attunement, attachment, and then alignment. Alignment being there, actually stepping into how God made you and what he made you to do.
We're recording these kind of in real time.
We are.
And so I really do mean this question to you. You're
still behind me, right?
There's a story about you that I experienced with you that I would much rather you tell than me, but I'm willing to tell it. When you burst out of a closet to announce something about yourself.
You tell. You remember it in a unique, distinct way.
Does he need to tell it though?
The way I remember is not quite the way. I will shame myself in the remembrance of it.
Right. Yeah. So we were doing, this is in treatment, which we've been
When he was working there as a patient?
This is pre-work.
Oh, okay.
This is pre-staff.
Because he ended up working at that treatment center. I just don't know when it was.
Pre-work.
Yeah. But this is in the context of alignment, where you're talking about. Like, this fish comes in, and he was in treatment with a really unusual mixture of other men. There were some famous guys in there, some brilliant guys, some guys that had reached, I won't mention specifics, but great notoriety in their field. Really, and they were all these really literally loud, kind of expressive, just huge, we would call them big personalities.
Yeah. I know some of those guys. I know.
So we were doing this experiential thing to where we were talking about the community. Were there 10 there? Was a full house? So
it was
10,
full house.
10 guys.
Felt like 12, but it was 10.
It felt like 100.
100, yeah.
And so we were doing this thing, and I was asking the other members of the community to sculpt the community. What does this community look like emotionally? And one of them said, Todd, you go get in the closet and just leave the door cracked. And as the thing went on and on and on, Todd just completely, like, he didn't even exist anymore. And just kind of out of the blue, one of the guys, it was almost like, throw in what's his face. He didn't say what's his face. Todd burst. It was a supply closet. It smelled like cleaning solution. Mops were in there. Comet. I mean, it was just this nasty supply closet. Just old light bulbs, fluorescent tubes. And Todd was in this kind of trash room in there, and
with the door cracked.
And he came. He swung the door open, and every head turned over there, and he screamed something along the lines, "Stop it! I'm here too." And yes, you are. Finally, there you are. And what really was, we've laughed about this 1,000 times since then, going on 20 years ago, but that is a very dramatic, and in the moment, there was nothing funny about it. It was this lost child, scapegoat child, covered by all this noise and high octane and just chaos, finally pulling out. Something happened in him, relationship with me or relationship with himself, or something happened in there. He busted out of that closet and made an announcement that he was present. It wasn't like physically imposing, I'm gonna whip y'all. It was a statement from a boy screaming, I am sick and tired of putting these thatch huts together on this beach with my fins. I need to be a part of this. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, period, much less with Todd. But there's alignment looks so many different ways.
Yeah,
it's kind of the point of this story. Like, it can look like Todd was cooperative and godly and kind and supportive and
in hiding. Hey, what do you remember about being in that closet? Or what do you remember about what forced you out of the closet? Your experience there.
That's why I was going to shame myself, in the sense of, I don't remember bursting out of the room. I remember just like poking my head out the door. That's how my memory is. I just thought I'd poke my head out the door and say, hey, I'm over here, fellas. That's how I remember the story. So
he burst out.
He swung it open. He screamed, I'm here too. He walked out, stood against the wall, and began to tell them how sick and tired he was of not being seen. It was great. And it was alignment. It was some form of connection. Him with me, him with God, him even with those guys. Like, I'm going to trust this thing, or my anger as we come, my movement and clarity into my identity. It's just too painful not to be myself.
Okay, so I'm going to guess. I wasn't there. I'm going to guess. So there's some of those, him bursting out saying, I'm tired of not being seen. I'm going to guess that ended up being an alignment or a confrontation around, Todd, what have you done to stay so hidden? Because he put himself in that closet, by the way, for his own protection somehow, for his own safety somehow, but also was in a closet.
Yeah, that was true the whole. Yeah. Well, the way I remember, I was probably 10 weeks in. It wasn't early in my journey.
Took a while.
Yeah, it was very early, very late in the game. And again, those guys, and I love them to death, but there was no space for me, and it was very familiar to where I came from. Mm-hmm. I had none of this growing up. Like, I did not have any places to be myself. I had no place there was no acceptance for who I was. And even today, I think I get made fun of all the time I'm very unique in my style. And so that even there was no place of expression. Like, I could not express myself. I was always having to fit in. And so there, my 10 weeks there, I had to fly under the radar. I think part of that is, one of the first stories that really happened to me in treatment. A fight broke out over me, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I got to get through here. Just stay under the radar, Todd. Mm-hmm. Just stay under the radar as much as possible. And I think I did until that day.
It was beautiful. You couldn't help but do what you did because you were getting so much of your identity back, and your identity in Christ, the Imago Dei in you, Todd. The gravitational pull toward that core of the center of that diagram
so
here,
true.
It was so strong. It was like a magnet. You couldn't, something like you were, metaphorically speaking, it's almost like you were pulled out of that closet by this magnetic pull towards your image, who God made you to be.
I think a lot of that was, there's two primary, counselors in there, but my connection with Phil, he began to speak things into my life that no one had ever spoken into my life. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, like, there is a beauty about me that has not been allowed to be expressed. There's a uniqueness about me. There's giftings about me. I came into treatment not that way, for sure. Not at all.
And then you just think about how many people listening and or watching what we're talking about here. Everyone, the three of us there are a million more stories like that in Todd's life and yours and mine. And everyone listening and watching this podcast has their form of a pull toward how they're made. Mm-hmm. Want to be made, how they're made, and so if you are listening and or watching, just pay attention to your version of these stories. Right. Like, what happens when you've been in the closet put away, or you've been in the closet because you've been too much trouble. If you're a scapegoat child and you've been thrown in the closet because you just won't behave, or you finally say something about yourself that someone said about you that's affirming to you, and then you want to crawl under a piece of furniture. Like, everyone watching and listening to this has their form of that, which is what's so beautiful about the scriptures and the picture of Jesus drawing people and correcting and bringing them back into alignment. Yeah. Like, hey, fish, get back in the water, and here's the water. So get back in your relationship with me, your identity in me, and swim.
So, and even in this, when we talk about this, we make references to being in treatment, 12, 13 weeks, intense environment. Everyone doesn't need that, but everyone needs what happened there. But for most of us, that process happens, instead of it being in a really concentrated period of time, like where you go real deep, really fairly quickly relative to your whole life. Mm-hmm. Most of us have to do it the long way. I describe it this way, even in the work that I do as a therapist or a coach with Tin Man, is that, and I tell people all the time, because we meet maybe for an hour a week, okay? Mm-hmm. And for anyone listening to the podcast, even if you're not meeting with somebody one-on-one, you're like maybe going to church and maybe being in a small group or whatever it is, being discipled by somebody. I always say that setting is like you have a teaspoon in your hand and you're trying to dig a hole.
Yeah.
And I say this, if you stay in the same spot long enough with a teaspoon, you can dig a deep hole. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can. You just got to stay at it. Like, just stay at it. Just stay at it. You look down, all of a sudden you're up to your ankles and up to your knees. Mm-hmm. When we talk about it, in your case, in my case too as well, being in a treatment setting, I was just so impaired and so locked up and frozen internally and so compartmentalized. I could have done it the long way, but I really benefited from a bulldozer pulling in and digging a really deep hole. Yeah. And then continuing with my teaspoon, which, by the way, Tin Man, we do a lot of stuff like that. We do EMDR intensive, 2-day intensives. We do 4-day therapeutic intensives for men and women, where we say it's like the equivalent of a year's work in 4 or 5 days. Like we have settings where it's bulldozer-like to encourage this process. I'm not selling what we do for that. I'm just saying we do have those marriage intensive. We do have those kind of experiences. But the blocking and tackling, a lot of times, is the teaspoon.
Yeah.
And that's what most of us have. And even us, all three of us are licensed therapists. I always say this. And what's healing is intimate relationships are by definition therapeutic. We heal in relationships. Now, we happen to have licenses to do some therapeutic type work in that, or we coach that way. But that's just because we're learning and trying to help people learn how to do intimacy, be known, admission, acceptance. Like that's all the stuff that we're doing when we meet with people. And that doesn't have to be with a person that's got a license to do it. That's with a brother or sister in Christ. That's with a child. That's with a spouse. That's with a friend. That's in a small group. And by the way, not everybody will necessarily want to go there, but you can sure test the water.
Yeah.
And I've always found if I lead with my weakness, another whole podcast we can talk about that. If I lead with my weakness, it's amazing how other people respond with their vulnerability if I will lead that way in some kind of setting. But I'm just saying, and when we make those references, I don't want it to sound like, excuse me, like somehow that's the holy grail is you go off to a treatment center. I go, that's just because of how frozen I was. Okay. But on the other side to go, but the principles that we're talking about apply across the board in any setting.
Yeah, I think you said it best just a minute ago, and I hope our audience hears it. All of us have been wounded in relationship, and we all have to experience healing through relationship. And so that's really this process. This process is about relational connection with another human being to get me back to how God created me to be. And that's discipleship 101. I mean, that is
101.
That is it. Sanctification. Like, I was here, I got wounded. Because of my woundedness, I overcompensated, hid, you fill in the blank. And I needed someone in my life to see me for where I was and push me back to who God created me to be. And so, like, my greatest work, I went to treatment, but the great work was the relationship I had with Phil, the relationship I have with you, like all the healing that comes daily through my woundedness. And you said it early on, it is a process. It is going to be a lifelong process. I mean, again, all the time, my stuff comes out sideways because of the woundedness that was created, even after doing this for 18 years. And I need men in my life that do really 4 things for me. And I would say this in closing, and I'll hand it back to you guys. But the 4 things, I need someone to continue to bring their heart to me, confront me when I was off. I needed people in my life to tell me the truth about what they were seeing in my life, not just confronting me, but telling me, using the truth with compassion. And then I needed people to really be really, really committed to me through that process, and then continue over and over. And the last thing I need in my own self is a willingness to be confronted. Jenny over the weekend asked me, you think people in your life would say you're still open to confrontation? I was like, I don't know. She said, well, go ask Phil. That's what she told me at lunch yesterday. Go ask Phil. I was like, okay, I'll ask Phil. So I asked Phil this morning. So those 4 things, I think, is how we get to, I get that question a lot. Well, how do you actually do alignment? I would say those things. Men in my life is what the proverb says, one man sharpens another man. And that is what confrontation, that alignment is. So,
Try it on.
You want to go through, this is the last in this series. Although this stuff will leak out in some way into any other podcast we do.
Right.
Okay. But this is the last in this concentrated series on the transformational process. Phil, go back and do a quick flyover.
Okay.
I'll talk about Emotions Unveiled, and then we'll wrap it until next time.
So if you want to take a look at the diagram, it's on our website, 10men.org. It's a free download. We'd love you to get a copy of that, take a look at it. So I'm going to run through it and rewatch or listen or follow along if you already have this. We all start with a base identity in God himself. In Genesis chapter 2, breathed into Adam, thus into us, the imago Dei, the image of God. And that gets damaged. We get disconnected relationally through abandonment, disconnection, rejection in a broken world, because it's going to happen to every human because the world is broken and we're all sinners and fallen due to the fall of Genesis 3. And children make up a story about themselves. We make up stories about ourselves as to our inadequacy, what we did too much of or didn't do enough of in order to explain that abandonment, because children cannot stand the pressure of seeing their parents that way. So they blame themselves. It's called toxic shame. And then to get relief from the toxic shame, we end up making sure we're acting on the outside in the way to not be abandoned again. That word again is important. I don't want to be abandoned again. I don't want to be disconnected again. So I'll do whatever I have to do to not have that happen. And codependency and people pleasing does that. Because of our human limitation, codependency will not last. It falls in at the middle because I can't be so codependent enough to make everybody okay enough to make me okay. And that's when it goes to this last outer circle called addiction, even an addictive cycle with anxiety and depression. Addiction is I'm looking for that shortcut way to put these feelings to sleep because I don't want to deal with them. So that's moving from self, Genesis 2, to being really sick, sickness and addiction. So these last podcasts in the transformational process have been about how do we get back to how we're made. We start with an admission. We kind of use the Prodigal Son in some of these episodes to describe the journey, but we begin with an admission of need. And coming from that admission of need, we're able to look for and receive acceptance. We grieve our powerlessness to do it on our own, and we get an accepting relationship with other people based on my admission. They accept me as part of their life. And then to address the toxic shame I've been living in, people attune to me. We see all through the New Testament Jesus attuning to the people he ran into, being on the same emotional page, recognizing those who are mourning, he mourns with them. That very concise statement in Romans chapter 12, we rejoice with those who rejoice, we weep with those who weep. That is a verse of attunement. We are paying attention to where other people are and joining them there. And this attachment around the broken world, like we need attached relationships, and attachment addresses this broken world that we have experienced in our disconnection, thus opening the doorway to deeper relationships, getting back in alignment, what we've talked about today and how God made us.
So good.
So if you know how to bookmark on a podcast, bookmark the last 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like with what you just summarized. Like that's just gold.
Mm-hmm.
Bookmark it. That's worth listening to about 10 times
Mm-hmm.
or 100. Okay. So let me mention this as we close this out. This is a resource that Phil and I did with some help from some others. We had a lot of good people around us giving us feedback, but this came out actually last summer. So it's, some of you may have heard it already. I hope you've heard of it, but you probably haven't. But it's called Emotions Unveiled, a Bible study exploring the depths of the heart of Scripture. And what we do in here is this is actually a tool. The reason I'm bringing it up right now, and just so you know, like I'm so adverse to like hawking books or resources but I can tell you, if I think there's something that actually helps me relationally do what I need to do to get what I need and to live the life I want to live, I will talk about it. So Phil and I wrote this study, and I have real healthy anger for encouraging somebody to go through this. There's nothing I've ever been a part of as a creator, writer, resources that I've been more proud of or glad about than this project you and I worked on.
Yeah.
Because this thing is the intersection of understanding of how we're made neurobiologically. A lot of times you hear that comes out in here. Theologically, that we're bringing understanding of the Scripture and how God made us. And then getting into the whole territory of even our stories and the feelings around those stories and our narrative and how that fits in and how we live in light of all that and grow through it so we don't stay children. We actually grow up into the bodies that we're in. Yes. You know, I'm not a 63-year-old man on the outside, but I'm still an 8-year-old on the inside. Anyhow, so we wrote this study. There's 8 chapters, one for each of the 8 feelings, but it's not just a study around the feelings. These are broken up in sections where there's a section that really helps you to connect your own story and the things that have happened in your story around that particular feeling. Then there's a whole Bible study section around that feeling, whether it's hurt or loneliness or sadness, whatever it is. And then there's a piece that then you get to talk more currently about what's going on in your life relative to that emotion. And then this is one of my favorite parts. At the end of every chapter, there's a name for one of the names of God that identifies with who he is to a person, okay, who has that need. Because a lot of us don't know what we need, but really that's because we don't know what we feel. Mm-hmm. Because if you know what you're feeling, it's going to take you to a need. One of the reasons we're so numb to our feelings is because we don't want to be needy. So what happens is if I can start to pay attention to my feelings, I'm going to come to a need. And God gives himself different names that correspond often to those needs we have as humans. And so then we'll take that name of God and we begin kind of help guide your hand to kind of begin to write a psalm vertically to God about this is what's going on in my life around my sadness. And then you finish it, but now you're bringing all that vulnerability into your relationship with God. And we walk through that in 8 chapters. We do there's a QR code on every one of these chapters that Phil and I will teach on sadness or on loneliness, 15 to 20 minutes on each. They're real quick, but they're shorter than these podcasts. But it gives a chance to kind of talk more about that particular emotion before you get into the study. It's designed to be done as a journal exercise. You can do it on your own. You can do it like if Phil and I were meeting together. We could both do the chapter and then sit down at the coffee shop or sit down in one of our homes, and then we could talk about what we came up with, or we could do it in a group, or you can do it in a classroom setting. It's designed to work in all those places, but it really is, when it comes to even where we've been even on the way back, on the admission, the acceptance, okay, the attunement, the attachment, and then the alignment. This is a tool that kind of fits into that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to say anything about this, Phil?
No, your covenant's beautiful. Good job.
So it's Emotions Unveiled, the Bible study exploring the depths of the heart of Scripture. It's on Amazon. Again, it's going to probably be, it came out last summer, so it's out there. It's probably sold, I don't know, I haven't checked lately, maybe 10 million already. I'm just kidding. We're not in it for the money, because we obviously won't make money probably on this. We're in it for the resource to help you get more of what you want, what you're made to have. And I'm kind of sad we're coming out of the transformational process, except that I know we're going to be revisiting these concepts. Mm-hmm. But I get more excited about where we're going. I think next podcast, we're actually going to talk about the study, Emotions Unveiled. So that's why I also want to introduce it to lead us into that for our next podcast.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. 10men.org. All kinds of resources. Hope you'll take advantage of those. And we've all three contributed to that database that's there. So lots of free stuff to download, and you can certainly get access to the Bible study as well. So thank you for being along the ride with us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks again for joining us on Return to Heart. To access resources mentioned on this program or to find out more about Tin Man Ministries, please go to tinman.org.